Okay.
Okay. Well, Abraham Lincoln, and of course, Abraham Lincoln has kind of a little smirk on his face, and the idea being that as I was painting him, that smirk sort of emerged, and my first thought to myself was, it looks like he's chuckling over a dirty joke, and so I made that the theme. And because you don't think of Abraham Lincoln in that sense very much when you think about him, you think lofty thoughts, and you think, and of course he was just somebody like the rest of us, had these ideas too. That's Abraham Lincoln. That's the Abraham Lincoln.
You do other Abraham Lincolns also.
I do. Yes. I do. I like I kind of call it the architecture of his face and head and body, and I'm very taken with his structure, and it's fun to paint. And of course, he's a mysterious, brilliant, wonderful historical person for us, and so he's become kind of iconic for me.
So I see that you have the American flag, the stars, and the bars in back of it. Is there anything else in this particular work that close-up? Should we have a close-up of it? Or
not really. Not
like
really.
The lips, yes.
Yeah, his mouth. Now his eyes are interesting because
his eyes are quite interesting.
Because they're kind of a blue or blue-green eyes, and I'm sure he had brown eyes. I don't know that anybody knows. I haven't Googled it or anything, but I'm sure his eyes weren't blue, and yet they seem okay to me there. I'm happy with it. There's something playful about it. There's something lighthearted about that.
And that left eye of his looks so real.
Yeah, right. Right. Now, when he was assassinated, I think the bullet settled behind the right eye. And it's interesting to me that in this painting, the right eye is not exactly where it ought to be, but it looks okay. Yeah. But it's a little weird, and I was kind of taken with the idea of that.
How many Lincolns do you think you've done? Quite a bit?
Oh, I maybe have done 10 over the years. Good. And some of them are small watercolors. A few of them were small sketches, maybe more than 10. Pen and ink sketches and pencil sketches and so forth. And but paintings I've done maybe four.
Your background was a drawing, wasn't it? You were a professional.
I was an architectural illustrator and an advertising and design and marketing illustrator as well. But most of my work was done with architecture, and that's probably why you see very little architecture in the work that I do.
And what is this? Is this a self-portrait?
That's a self-portrait, and I put it up there. I put it up there just for an ID, just sort of an identification. And somebody said, "Well, you should put a price on it." So I did. I don't think anybody's going to want to buy my self-portrait, but it's here just kind of, it's a good painting. I think it's a good painting, and so I felt okay about putting it up.
Is this Lincoln? Is this for sale or is this?
Yes, it's been purchased. That little tag on there, that little color tag, indicates purchase. So I'm happy about that. Yeah. And I've had him around a long time. So paintings that hang around a long time, I love it when they finally get purchased. It just feels now it's not going to get damaged sitting around the studio. My studio's not a refined place, and
yes, I've been
yeah, there's a bit of dust and there's a bit of that's right.
So what are we having here?
Well, now the abstractions, I've always done abstractions, and I love doing them. Let me get out of the sunlight. Anyway, what I've done there is I've taken small paintings that I've done many versions of a painting on it. Nothing ever worked, and they've got all these levels of paint. So and it's on board. So I got my sander out, and I started working back down through until I found an abstraction that I thought, this really is intriguing to me. I really like this. I like the technique and the look.
So this is like a dimensional, textured?
Yeah, sort of. And of course, even in abstraction, it's not flat. It indicates air, or goes around something. I mean, it's an abstraction about that's supposed to look three-dimensional, really. Yeah, it has a stage set look to it.
Van Gogh, kind of a little bit of.
It's very textural. Yeah, the paint and the thing about an abstraction like that is that the paint is the subject and the technique is the subject, and you really want those things to show through and shine. Yeah, and that's one of the reasons I do it. Now, above it is that crazy little guy, the Viking. Now there, the abstract, you know, everything, every painting is really abstract. And representational paintings are abstractions at the service of representation. They start out as abstracts, and they have to be thought of as abstracts when composing. And so all this stuff is abstract as well as representational. The portraits, of course, I'm trying to express some sort of inner feeling.
Cabin fever.
Cabin fever. I've had cabin fever, and I'm sure that's what I looked like. You know, very unsatisfied, very kind of wistful. You know, looking off into the ozone in hopes of seeing the sun. And yeah.
I like your eyes. I have noticed that before, how much work you put into
Yes.
the eyes.
The thing I do with eyes is a lot of people love to be hyper specific. I like eyes that are more suggestive. They look like they're more animated, and I love it when people paint. Excuse me. When people paint beautiful eyes, but to me they become they don't have any animation, and I like it where the eyes are almost suggested and not fully painted, but still have a look of soft warmth and flesh and a glint of the light. Yes, right, right.
And what is this one here?
That's Rembrandt.
Oh, it is.
That's a portrait of Rembrandt, and Rembrandt's been a high water mark in art history for me, like Abraham Lincoln is for so many people. And I decided a few years ago that he did a lot of self-portraits, and so I was going to do a lot of portraits. I'd studied all his self-portraits.
Right, you have other portraits of him,
I do.
Yes.
There's one on down the wall there, another one. And I paint him without any reference, because I've looked at his work and his self-portraits so many thousands of times over the years that I know his face and I can paint it. It's a struggle. I worked on that for a long time and wiped it out 2 or 3 times, sanded it off, started over, and then, you know, it was a struggle, you know, because I'm making it up without looking at a reference.
Oh, not to interrupt here, but in art, I find that some artists can never finish their work. It's never finished. Do you have a point where it's finished? Your art is finished?
Oh, there's a few pieces that I have that I say, well, I'm just never going to work on them anymore. But if they're around my studio and I walk in the morning and I look at something and say, oh, I see something, I'll work on it in a second. I don't care if it's 10 years old, hasn't been worked on for 10, 15 years. If I see something and say that's a flaw, or that could be better, and I know what to do, then I'll go back in and paint on it. I would paint on this again, and yet I would sell it this way because I think it stands on its own as a finished painting. But if I see something in it that I want working on, I'll do it. Yeah, I'm not shy about that at all. And then I've been enjoying making up Indian faces, heads, personalities, and those I just make up. I don't use reference, and so one of the things that I'm noticing happening now when I paint one, I'm beginning to paint the same Indian over and over, so I'm going to have to work on that. Make them look more like individuals.
These kind of look different. This one looks to look.
Well, some of these were painted early on when I was starting to do this. Some of the color is a touch repetitive from painting to painting, so I'm working on not being so mannered that way. That's that's the art student in me yet, you know. And I love painting them. I love those faces. It's like Abraham Lincoln. The architecture of the face is the clothing, and of course I'm very cursory on these. I haven't really been specific because I haven't studied yet enough specifically. You know, what's a Ponca Indian look like? What does an Apache look like? And I'm not at the point yet where I'm being super specific with them. I'm making up personalities and people. The horses was fun. I like painting animals. I love animals. I'm an animal person. And right now I'm seeing things I would do.
What would
If
you
I
do here?
on the white horse, I'd probably repaint the legs. And the blue horse, there's just too many things to talk about. But I think it stands up. I think it works as a finished painting. I mean, but it's the kind of thing where the artist could tweak it forever. You know what I mean?
Like this part right in here. That looks
Yeah.
beautiful. Yeah.
The colors are nice.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, the colors are nice. And I'm a color person. I like
Yes, you are.
a lot of color.
Another
horse that was sold, so that's nice. And that one
You do custom work like people's horses or dogs?
yeah,
or anything?
sure, I do that. Yeah, right, I do that. I think that's fun because then you get to know the animal too. You know what I mean? And I love animals. And there's one. That one looks a little more. It's not quite a specific person. It almost looks like it might have come from a movie poster. It's almost like a Hollywood Indian. I like it and I've enjoyed painting it, but it's a little less. It has a little less intellectual depth, I think, than some. Those two Indians on the bottom are both. I really enjoyed doing those two, and I've thought about taking that upper one there and doing something on like a 4x8 foot panel, just like it.
That would be beautiful.
Yeah, I've considered that. I haven't started it yet. And then the child above it, I've been practicing painting children because there are some friends of mine that want their babies, they want them painted. They want portraits. And I so seldom paint little children. So I've been making paintings of little children and practicing so that I'm more in tune with.
Well, how is that framing? How is that done?
The framing, it's not framed.
Well, I meant the outlines. and
Well,
the regular.
You mean the lines in the artwork itself, the vertical?
No, this,
Oh, the canvas.
the canvas. How
Yeah.
the canvas is-
What I did was I cut a square out of a junk piece of canvas and wanted to just do a quick sketch. And then it started to turn into something I liked. So I mounted it on a square piece of masonite and let the canvas hang over so that it was natural and curled, and over the years will probably curl and get kind of cool. There's another Rembrandt.
That's good.
And the idea
You
there.
over Richard, so we can see
Okay.
an idea of the scale.
Of scale? Okay, right.
Okay.
It gives you an idea.
With ice cream.
Ice cream cones.
Okay.
I like to have a little humor in my paintings sometimes, and especially with Rembrandt, because he took himself so seriously. You just want to tell him, get over yourself. And of course, so the ice cream cones they're frivolous, and they didn't exist when he was alive, especially in colors like that. And so I thought, what would Rembrandt think of ice cream?
From his face?
Yeah, well, you eat
now
ice
you're
cream and
dripping it and
yeah, you're
everything.
dripping it and it's dripping on your hands and it's dripping off your chin. And I mean, a person like him, if he got an ice cream cone, he wouldn't know how to handle it
Yeah,
really.
you wouldn't, right.
So I just put the ice cream cones in because I wanted him not to just be sitting as a portrait. I
Was
wanted
he
to.
right-handed, do you think?
I don't know if anybody even knows. I
Yeah.
think probably most people
Probably.
are.
He's got ice cream in his right hand.
Right, yes.
So,
And I've never thought about that. Yeah, I've never thought about that. And then these little things here are interesting. I go camping every year, and that was a memory. I painted a memory from a camp scene.
Campfire?
Yeah,
Okay.
a main campfire at night. And above that one, that painting above it is a farm woman. I was raised in the country on farm, and I've seen my mom look like that, exactly like that, hundreds and hundreds.
That's my mother too.
Yeah, with the apron.
Apron.
And above it is a painting of my dad with a horse from a tiny little photograph taken in about 1920. He would have been about 17, 18 years old, and that was the horse they had.
It was a black and white at the time.
Yeah, it was a black and white photo, so I took a little abstraction and I made it more specific.
Well, look at this. This is fabulous.
This I did as a demo in a gallery that I was working in.
This is-
And I started it and did it about 90% finished in the demo with people around. And then I took it to the warehouse and I did more on it. This is a good example of a painting that if I had it at the studio, I'd do something on it every day, probably.
Yeah,
And
good.
continue.
but I kind of
And
like
the never-ending story.
exactly, really. But I like the roughness of this. Mm-hmm. It animates it. It
Makes it human.
yes, it democratizes it. Everything. You know what I mean? It makes it. It's not a precious thing. Painting isn't overly precious.
Well, now here's,
A whole different thing.
yeah.
I got into looking at the paintings of the tonalists, specifically George Ennis from the late 1800s, and his landscapes, and he was a brilliant tonalist. Very soft focus, very atmospheric, and very, extremely beautiful in the colors.
So
and the
this is
interpretation.
water and sky?
This is just foreground landscape in the early evening with the sun going down, with the trees. You're looking through the trees at a landscape.
Yeah, now I can see it, right.
Yeah, no water in that one.
Oh, no water, okay.
No water in that one. Just the landscapes in
Okay.
shade now.
Now we're coming to a couple.
Some of the same technique,
large-
but with the added feature
Okay,
of the animals.
right, we're going here and we're going in
There you go.
into animals, right.
Right, the sheep. And you can see it's somewhat the same technique of
You got the same
letting
sky and,
letting the paint be very wet and do its thing, and then dry, and then once the paint is dry, then go back
oh,
over
I
and
see.
add the specific.
Yeah, you got
specifics.
some straw or wheat plants.
Yeah.
Flower.
It's like they're in the field. There's,
Oh yeah, what a nice, when you get in here, what a nice texture this is.
it's
Beautiful.
yeah, the paint. I kind of like to let paint be seen as paint. I'm not trying to hide the fact that everything is done in paint. I want people to be able to look at the things and say, I can see how he did this.
Uh-huh.
You know?
Oh, look at this.
In other words, show a lot with as little.
It's kind of fantastic how you've got that maybe heliotrope color in there that makes it just does something that
jumps.
snaps it. Yeah,
Yeah, it
right. It
jumps.
snaps the whole thing.
It jumps. Yeah, and then of course this is a much older painting, and I was doing landscapes that were rather specific, and this is a road that down by Marion, Ohio, and it goes back into the country to a little town called Caledonia, where my parents lived, and it's called the Caledonia Mud Pike, and it's a big, huge oak tree still there, and that was a hot summer day, and the name of the painting is Muggy Sunday.
Oh, Muggy Sunday.
Yeah, Muggy Sunday. I was going to see my parents and visit my parents, and stopped and took a photograph and made the painting from it.
Oh,
And it's been around a long time, and I just am so pleased that it's finally finding a home.
beautiful. Oh, is this one gone too?
I'm sorry?
Is this found? Is this sold also?
Yeah.
Oh, what a nice show to get so much of your work out into the world.
Yes, I'm gratified by that. I'm gratified that people have enjoyed what they've seen. And here this is a good example of where abstraction and representational philosophies really meet on equal terms. I think this is rather abstract for a landscape, and it also harkens back to the tonalist painting and expressionism. 'Cause
Yeah,
it's-
it kind of it also the trees could be buildings.
Yeah, I mean, sure, it's interpretive. This is a very interpretive
Oh,
piece.
nice. Yes.
And yeah, I liked it. I liked this painting. The minute I painted it in not too long a period of time. It didn't take me much to paint it. And I said, looking at it, I'm thinking, don't do anything more.
It's already done.
It's done. Yeah,
Yeah, look
let
at
it go. You know,
fabulous.
farm wagons. There again, I'm coming back to my roots
Mm-hmm.
in the country, and I do that a lot. I like doing old trucks and cars and farm equipment, and anything that has to do with locomotion and its equipment. I like to paint.
Beautiful.
mainly farm related. I haven't done trains, but I've thought about it. I've considered the idea of doing trains because they're losing their what's the right word for it? Their mysteriousness and their importance.
Oh, yes, they are. Right.
And so I kind of want to honor them. And that's just somebody I saw running downtown and took a photo and put him in an abstraction and made it relevant.
Do you do a little bit from photography or
I do a lot from
photography?
I'll use
Isn't
it.
that wonderful? Yes.
I love it. I mean, it's
Renoir didn't have that. He couldn't do that.
Right. And it acts as a preliminary drawing for me. And